Hi, I'm JJ. Welcome back. So this is another monthly roundup. I read a bunch more uh, that didn't really fit any of the other categories that I was reading for the month of November. Uh, but I, just as always, they're all over the place. And so one of them I just finished and it made me cry. So um, I hope I don't cry when I'm talking about it. Uh, but I will start with so Lujan, Dreams of Sunflowers is a story inspired by Lujan El Hatolo. I'm really bad. I'm sorry. But this is her sister wrote this book about her because she's been imprisoned multiple times in Saudi Arabia for fighting for women's rights there. And so she's was famously fighting for women's right to drive. And so she recorded herself coming home from the airport when she was coming from Canada, I believe, and she filmed herself with her dad in the passenger seat as she drove home. And of course, she was arrested and got in trouble for that. And she continues to fight for women's rights there and equality there. And so this book was written while she was in prison for one of her times. And at the end of the book, there's actually a picture of her herself. And I apologize for my cat. She's very needy right now. This is her, who the story is based on, told by her sister Lena and Uma Mishra Newberry. And it was illustrated by Rebecca Green. And so instead of having it about girls who are trying to drive, she wrote it about girls who want to fly, but only boys and men are allowed to fly, no women. So she dreams of being able to fly and see this patch of sunflowers that her dad always talks about, and you can only see them if you're flying. And so he encourages her, and he has a set of wings for her, and they fly around together. And there is a newspaper that catches her flying amongst the sunflowers. And in this book, she actually gets to inspire other girls to fly as well. So it's a really cute idea to actually tell this big story that was happening in Saudi Arabia. And this was my contribution to Saudi Arabia for my Read Around the World project. And this is my cat, Stormy. We could have also called her Hurricane. She's the one that you hear running around and making noise in a lot of my videos. She's very nice right now, but she might also be running around and making nonsense noises. So that's her now that you've met her. So the next one that I read was actually about Romania, but I did not include that as my Romanian book because the author is a Lithuanian American, Ruda Sepetys, and I included that for my Lithuanian contribution instead. So it's called I Must Betray You, and it's the fall of the Soviet Union as they're trying to break away, and they have a very corrupt person in charge. And it's about how disinterested we are. It fits along in the United States we were concerned more about like East Germany and all that stuff, but nobody was really paying attention to what was happening in Romania, even though they were going through a lot of stuff. So it reminds me a lot of the books on East Berlin, as well as when I was reading about North Korea and stuff like that. So they're in a communist regime that does not allow for any freedom. They're not allowed to, question the government, listen to anything from the outside world. And in this story, this kid is trying to help his relative. I can't remember, 2 weeks ago, if it was his, I think it was his grandpa, who was sick, very, very sick, and he wanted to try to get medication for him. And he was able to if he spied on his neighbors. So all he had to do was like turn in people who were, colluding against the government. His top priority was he had befriended this friend who was son of American diplomat. And they were trying to figure out, what America knew, what they were going to try to do, if they were going to try to stop what was going on. He wanted to know if he had any people conspiring within Romania to try to break away. And so it was a very dangerous thing. It was all about loyalty and mistrust. He started to not trust his own neighbors. He started to not trust his own family. It really humanized a lot of the other stories that I read, because those were like broad scope about how, everybody was feeling at that time. And then this just kind of narrowed it down to an individual person struggling with, do I tell on people to save people that I love, or do I do the right thing? And he wanted to figure out how to topple the government, but he was just one person and he was a kid, so he didn't know if he could do it. So they're in danger and they're desperate, but they want freedom so badly. And so it was a great story to be told. And I learned a lot about that time period in the 90s, the late 90s. And so what is interesting, or the early 90s, and what's interesting is I had a friend who actually adopted somebody from Romania who would have been in the orphanages during the late 90s, like the fall of all of this. So reading this book, it kind of made me understand the position that the orphanages and stuff were in. Everybody was poor at that time. There was a lot of struggling and stuff. So all these orphanages were really, really packed with people. And so my friend that I knew who adopted somebody from there, they adopted him when he was like around 7. And he had been so horribly abused in the orphanages that he actually, at 9, after abusing his own adopted sister within my friend's family, had to be, they had to give him up. And he was actually had to go, he was being interviewed and on trial and all this stuff, because he was essentially a 9-year-old diagnosed as a sociopath. And so I always wanted to understand more of Romania and how stuff like this happens. That was the first time in my personal experience that I had ever heard of reactive attachment disorder, which you have this proper attachment and development happening within your first year of life. And if you do not, you develop these reactive attachment disorder, where you don't trust people, you compulsively can lie, and you have a lot of stuff that I was aware of through my friend and her family that she had to try to navigate with, and so I always wanted to understand, I got it on a theoretical level, but I always wanted to understand how that happens, and I'm sure that at that orphanage he was not the only one, especially with how I had never heard of abuse so bad as what he was witnessing and experiencing there. And so I kind of went into this story wanting kind of a bit of that background feeling a personal connection to the country of Romania for that reason. Just trying to understand, and I felt like this hit on it a little bit. It showed how it would advance into, maybe 5-10 years later, where this kid would have then grown up in that situation and lived in that kind of traumatic way. So I think my history with the story and reaction to the story is going to be way different than anyone else's experience with the story. But I did enjoy it. Number two, since I needed to kind of back away from all that, was the Bookshops and Bone Dust. It's the Travis Baldree series. The first book that he had written in this series was this is the prequel to that, and that was, oh gosh, I just lost it. Anyway, it's basically about a love letter for books and for family, and it's set in a fantasy world. So you have like this ogre who goes into town, Viv, and she's in the next story too. And Legends and Lattes is the name of that one. And in that one, she sets up a coffee shop. In this one, she's working, trying to help somebody navigate their bookstore that's not experiencing a lot of business, and it might be closing. And the ways that they come up with different ways to sell books and stuff is totally what bookstores and stuff are doing now with their wrapping up of books for blind date with a book type of thing, and all that kind of stuff. But it was fun to kind of see it in this fantasy world. But the heart of the story is, she falls in love with reading. She's never read before. She's an adventurer who's hurt, so she's on the mend, and she can't go out with her group. So she comes in and she falls in love with reading. She wants to save this bookstore. She experiences love for the first time with somebody who owns like a bakery, and they form this little community, this found family, with everybody wanting to make the bookstore last, make it better, so that it doesn't just fall to the wayside, because it's what the community needs. So it was a really cute, cozy fantasy to read after reading some of the darker stuff and deeper stuff that I read throughout the month. The next one was The Great Divide by Christina Henriquez, and that is a Panamanian American author who wrote about the building of Panama Canal. And so you get multiple timelines, characters, their points of view and stuff. And what's really interesting in this time frame, the first part of the time frame, the older timeline, is shortly after the British give up their slavery in their colonies, because all the Caribbean and the areas that are all coming to help out and build the canal, looking for quick buck and hopefully more of a chance to make money and then return home, are all newly freed areas. So there's a main character who's from Barbados who comes here. You get a couple from the United States who go there, and then you have the Panamanian, I guess I don't know how to, people from Panama who are either, some of them are breaking from the loyalty and building this canal that the people who are there do not want, or some of them do not want. So you have the people who are there and are forced from their homes because they need to build in the area, they need to use that area even if they're not building the canal, for like dams and stuff, so they're forced from their homes. And so you have the interesting thing of this advancement in, for the world that wants this, and then you have the people there who are actually being the ones who are affected by it, the locals, but then the ones who are building it, who are, it's a dangerous work. There's people dying, there's people getting sick, and you have malaria and everything going around, in addition to the dangerousness of the job itself. And so I really enjoyed all the well-rounded aspect of it in understanding that time period and that place. You had the Colombian Civil War going on, with Panama wanting to break from Colombia, and all this stuff that I wasn't fully aware of. Just, kind of the U.S. involvement was what I knew. I didn't know about all the internal politics and other countries that were involved down there. So you got a lot of colonization discussed, and also you had a doctor coming down there, and he was focused on the mosquito theory, and kind of seeing that evolve as part of one of the storylines. You deal with racism, classism, gender roles. One of the main characters, she leaves Barbados because her sister is very sick, and she thinks that she can come here because they're newly freed. And then you kind of get the storyline that their dad was their mom's master. And so she comes to Barbados, or from Barbados to Panama, hoping to make some money and send it back to her family and stuff. And then you kind of get the family back in Barbados. So like I said, you get this all around story that I really enjoyed. There were parts that were slower, but overall it was really interesting. And like I said, I really enjoyed the completeness of it and understanding that era, and that the importance of what was going on there. And what was also interesting is that so they finally opened the canal and had their first ships and stuff go through in 1913, and didn't really get to experience the benefits of having this canal for trade and stuff very long, until the world was launched into World War I, and then how that was affected by the ability now to use the canal. So I just thought that was an interesting thing to kind of end with, and understand the significance of what the completion of this canal meant for the rest of the world. Another random one that I read this month, a really quick read. It was a retelling of the Dracula, Bram Stoker's Dracula, and this was called A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson, and it's a feminist retelling from the point of view of his first bride, and it's sensual and spicy. There's a polyamorous relationship because she's not his only bride. He keeps taking people in, and so you get from her point of view how she was trapped in this. Like, she was a sick peasant girl who he came and transformed, and now she basically had to live, and part of the time she was infatuated with him and in love with him, but he was manipulative and abusive, and he, possessive, and so she also lived in fear, and it was a really interesting look on domestic violence type of aspect to it, where you're in this push and pull and you don't know how to get out, and then when he brings more people in, she genuinely cares for them and loves them and wants to protect them, and so she stays because she's scared what he'll do to them if she leaves, and then it just perpetuates this, and it's eerie at times, because what he's capable of, and you have this like dangerousness always kind of hanging over them, even when she's telling like some of the more exciting or fun parts of that experience and that relationship. And then what was also interesting is the fact that um, at times when she was like embracing what they could do and stuff as they're moving from town to town and never being able to really connect with anyone because you can't let anyone know who you are and what you are. And there's a interesting part in there where she starts becoming like a vigilante, and since she knows that Vienna, especially, and this is during the war, and she's wants to almost leave it better. She saw real monsters, like Dracula, but also the human monsters that were creating this war, and she wanted to leave Vienna a better place than she found it, and starts like hunting down corrupt politicians and businessmen and stuff, and trying to make it safer when she leaves the place. And so that was a kind of an interesting aspect to like what it meant to have this power, and also kind of the fear of how long will he let me use this power before he like reels me back in and prevents me from actually feeling like I'm happy in my position now. So it was a quick story. I listened to it on audiobook, so I think the audiobook is only 5 hours. And it just, I felt like even though it's a retelling, it sort of fleshes out the character of Dracula a bit, as well as when they come to the castle and they find that he has all these brides and stuff. It kind of gives a bit more background to who they are as people, and I just found it interesting. It obviously is not for everyone. There's there's gore in there. There's like I said, it's quite spicy, but it was a fun quick read. The Empire of Pain was the nonfiction that I was not able to finish during nonfiction November, my wrap up, but I did want to include it in this wrap up. And that's the secret history of the Sackler dynasty. So they're the ones who are responsible for, like morphine and oxycodone, and the rise of like the pharmaceutical industry, and how horrible that industry is with their lobbyists and stuff. And so you get this background to the three brothers, the Sadler brothers, who create this company. They were all doctors. They were all Jewish from Europe who came to the United States after this World War II. When they couldn't find jobs, they did try to go elsewhere for a while when the Jewish people were not accepted here in the United States, and they were trying to find a place where they would not be discriminated against. Eventually, they created their own company. They hired a lot of Jewish people, but then they sort of extorted them because they're like, well, we can treat you however we want to. We can pay you whatever we want to because you're not going to find work anywhere else. And so they were very interesting people. Arthur had all kinds of affairs. One of the women actually was one who became a second wife, who helped with all this, the development of their country and stuff, or company and stuff. Arthur also, he wrote he had like multiple jobs as well as multiple relationships and wives, but he had a newspaper that he wrote for doctors, But then he had ads for their drugs within the newspaper, and then they also started doing the having the pharmaceutical reps go to the different doctors and stuff and try to peddle their drugs. And so it's about how they built the business, but also the like it will make you so angry with the corruption and the malice that they use, because at first they were doctors who actually wanted to help people, but then like something like switched and it was like all about like mass profits and making the most money. And they literally had their reps going to rural areas, where it was like family doctors, because the doctors were general doctors, they weren't pain doctors, so they could be basically be told everything that the reps wanted to tell them about how the pain meds worked, what to do with them, because they believed them. And if they started questioning it, once they started seeing how often abuse of these drugs was happening, how you could get addicted to them, become dependent on them. They started victim blaming then and saying, well, the drug is not what's addictive; it's the people and their personality. There's always going to be people with addictive personality. That's not your fault, type of thing. But they also went into communities where there was worker comp claims because people were injured at work, miners or different businesses like this, that needed this pain drug. And then the reps started getting paid more based on how much the drug was sold, not just how many times the doctors prescribed it, but how high the dosage was. So they started telling them to, up the dosage. And like it was all massive corruption. The people at the top were basically saying, go ahead and lie. You can say what you want. The doctors should be smart enough to believe you. It's just sales, like that. That's just what it is. And so it just kept going, and they were ignoring all the signs. And oxycodone itself was manufactured and given, it was basically promoted as working for 12 hours, even though there was nothing to indicate that it lasted that long, that it usually only lasted 8 hours. And so people who were subscribed or prescribed this were actually going through withdrawal until their next dose. So they were creating this dependency on the drug. And so people started taking it beyond what was required because they needed it for that pain. And then that just continuously added to the addiction of it. Not to mention the street value and all that black market stuff, but just to see how horrible it was all manufactured and promoted and sent to these places that were in pain and dire need of a solution, and they gave them something that eventually they realized was addictive, that was harmful, that could kill them, but it was still making them money, so they still kept doing it. And they let doctors be misinformed, thinking that oxycodone was less powerful than morphine, even though it was twice as powerful as morphine. And so they would make more money because the doctors had this false understanding of it. They didn't want to, subscribe morphine because they saw the effects of that. So this one is supposed to be less dangerous, so let's do this one. And that ended to this endemic that we had in the United States, especially in these poor or rural communities, with malice and understanding of it. And it, like I said, it will make you really upset, but it does help you understand how it got there. And I just the ways that they understood things, like and tried to develop drugs, like they were Agent Orange was actually made in Midland, Michigan, and there was this huge controversy around it because it started poisoning the ground that it was seeped into. So they learned from all these things in the past, and then had really great marketing to try to like push the blame on anyone else, to try to, you know, dissuade people from seeing the man behind the curtain type of thing. And yes, it's a Wizard of Oz reference because I did watch Wicked and loved it. But anyway, they knew. And one of the jobs that Arthur did was also basically a marketing rep. So he made the ads, and he understood how to get people to listen to them and want to buy more of his product. So I found a lot of the information very fascinating, but it was also very dense. So there were some times when it was really slow to try to get through. Plus, it was long, so it was not great. Not 100% recommendation, but it was very interesting. And it is written by Patrick Radden Keefe, who also wrote Say Nothing, that I'm still making my way through. So I do enjoy his writing, but there are times where it does drag because he's given you so much information. And then the last one, the one that I just finished, and did cry even though I expected it and knew it was happening. But my excuse is that I also did just have 2 deaths in my family, so I'm already very emotional. And so reading a story about child homelessness in India and death and stuff like that was very hard and emotional for me. But this was a really good book. The Bridge Home by Padma Venkatcharam. I'm sorry if I pronounced that name wrong, but I wanted to read this because November is also Youth Homelessness Month in the United States. I don't know if it's around the world, but I specifically wanted to read it in this month. And you follow these 4 kids, so 2 sisters. The youngest sister, I think that is my cat. They're 9 and 10, I believe. And the 9-year-old takes the 10-year-old away. The 10-year-old has a developmental disability, so the mom never wanted her to go to the hospitals or get help of any kind or anything because they were scared that they would be taken away. And so that was always kind of on the forefront of the daughter's head. But their father was abusive to the mom. But then when he started hitting her and the sister who she adored and loved, she ran a right way with her to save them. And so they're on the streets in the city and come across 2 boys, one a little younger than her and one a little older than her. And they create their own sort of family. And it's beautiful to see them together. It's so sweet and well done. It's actually ages 10 and up, so it's a middle grade book, but it didn't pull any punches. It didn't feel like it was written down to children. It actually was a struggle for them and showing what it's really like on the streets. They found a place on the bridge, and then when they got found out, they had to move to an abandoned cemetery. They had to scrounge around. Their work was digging into mounds of junk at the dump to try to find like bottles and stuff that were worth something that they could sell to this person. So like glass and bottles and stuff. Out of all the mounds and mounds of junk would barely get them enough, but it would get them enough for food for the day or something like that. And then the sister who had developmental disabilities, she liked to make bead necklaces and stuff, and they had every once in a while found somebody who was kind to them and gave them food or gave them something, and she was given this bead box by this woman who wanted to help, and so they were selling her necklaces as well. They also found this stray dog, and so together they had this beautiful little cute family, and there were so many like really good memories and moments, but then it was in the midst of all this like sadness and this hard reality of a life around them. And I thought it was so sweet, so beautiful, and yeah, it's gut wrenching at times, but seeing the relationship develop amongst this family, seeing the girl so care for her older sister and have that sister start to shine, and to have people who don't see her as a burden but see her as one of them and part of the family, was the sweetest thing. But I definitely highly recommend it. And the front cover is just so gorgeous. But yeah, so I read a children's book, a middle grade book, a very steamy, polyamorous retelling of Dracula, a nonfiction, and then a couple of books from around the world. So as always, my reading is eclectic. I hope that you found something that sounded interesting to you, and happy start of December. We're almost done with the year. I'm almost on 6 months of doing these videos, so I will be doing a 6-month kind of video for what I've done so far, where I plan to go, and just a lot of stuff coming forward. Anyway, happy reading, happy end of the month. Thank you, and have a good day.